Hello, everybody, and welcome back to day 8? 7? No, 8? I can't remember. Day whatever of the 100 Days of Making Comics challenge. I feel like I'm going to get even worse at keeping track of the days as we get even farther along into this series. It's already day 8 and I can't even remember that. What's the topic of today's video? I wanted to talk about how much prep you should do for your comic. And prep work is just all of the things that go into comic making before you ever start doing any of the pages. Prep work includes outlining your story, writing the script, sectioning your script into like panels and pages, so that when you start thumbnailing, you know how much dialogue is going to be on a page and what exactly you need to draw on that page, what kind of panels, what kind of poses, the emotion of the page. And then before you even start thumbnailing, though, you have to do like character designs and style work, color palette work, lands, like scenery work, location blueprints, just like, it's so many things. And I wanted to talk about what is absolutely necessary at the start, because there is a shit ton of prep work that goes into a comic, but and that's really daunting to think about. It feels like you'll never be able to actually start your comic. But what I have come to realize, and also what I repeat to myself when I feel like it's taking forever, is that I don't have to do it all at once. And what I mean by that is I don't have to design every single character that will ever show up in this story before I even do chapter 1. I don't have to make a blueprint of a floor plan of every single building that they ever walk into before chapter 1. And I don't have to write the entire script before I thumbnail chapter 1. And so this video is going to be me talking about what I plan on prepping before I start thumbnails, because thumbnails are going to start pretty soon, within the next 5 videos, I predict. So, now would be a good time to talk about what I plan on doing before that and what I plan on saving for later. So, first off, comics absolutely do need prep work before you start. You need at least to know what is going to be said, who is going to be saying it, where it's going to be said, and so who, what, and where. And so you need to have a script, you need to have a basic idea of what your characters are going to look like, how many characters there are going to be, and what their environment is going to look like. And the more that happens within your first act, the more prep work you have to do. And I say first act because there is an amount of like forethought that has to go into your prep before you start working on the pages. And I am currently scripting the first act. I am writing chapter 4 right now, and it is depending on how the scenes pan out, it will either be the end of chapter 4 or the beginning of chapter 5, or maybe the end of chapter 5. But either chapter 4 or chapter 5, where the first act ends and the second act begins. And that turning point in the plot is going to be where I feel comfortable in starting the beginning stages of thumbnailing, which means revising my chapters, making sure the dialogue is how I want it, and sectioning those scenes into pages and those pages into panels. And so that's my advice for the writing part of your comic prep, is you don't have to write the entire thing. It's good to have the entire thing like planned though, outlined, even if it's just like bullet point, here's the climax, 1 or 2 sentences, just so that you know what to foreshadow, because foreshadowing is super important in a cohesive and satisfying plot. Foreshadowing absolutely should be there, and what the fun thing about comics is that you not only foreshadow in the dialogue, but also in the drawings itself. So the fun thing about foreshadowing in comics is that you don't have to do anything but draw a foreshadowed object or like a sign or a note that says something foreshadowing. And the thing is that because it's just in the background, the characters could miss it, or the characters could look right over it, or dismiss it as something unimportant. And when that bit of foreshadowing comes to fruition at the end, your readers will be like, oh my god, I remember them dismissing that in the beginning. Or they reread it and they look in the background and they say, oh my god, the answer was right there and they didn't even see it. So knowing your ending and knowing what needs to be foreshadowed is the bare minimum of outlining. And then when you are comfortable with where your script is at, I recommend having the first act fully scripted before you start thumbnailing. And with the art, I recommend only prepping what's in the first act. And that doesn't mean that you just like stop prepping once you've done that prep. Like once you start thumbnailing, there's no more prepping until you're done completely drawing the entire first couple of chapters that are in the first act. The prepping never stops until you've done all of the prep for your entire story. But the prepping does get pushed to the side just slightly in favor of like thumbnails and doing the pages, the final pages. Because it's important to think about your character designs and your scene layouts and all of that, but you don't have to do it all at once. So the good thing about not starting your thumbnails until after you've fully scripted your first act is that now you know exactly who is going to be in the first act, and you only have to think about those characters for the moment. And then when you're done with those characters, you can move on to the second act. And when you're writing those, then when you're writing the second act, then you have a list of new characters that show up that then you start on their designs. And so it's a really good way to not feel overwhelmed by the amount of prep work that has to happen. So, on that note, the prep work that I'm doing, I already mentioned about the writing. So the drawing prep work that I'm doing is obviously my two main characters, Tori and Thea. You're seeing me finalize Thea's outfit and her outfit, and then doing a tentative color palette. I imagine once I do a character lineup with her and Tori, and I put them like in a scene, then I will tweak their colors just a little bit to match and to make it look like put together and like they belong in the same world and stuff. So that's what I'm doing right now. And I am prepping them, obviously, and I'm taking a lot of time with prepping them. And that's my second point on how much prep you should do, which is that the amount of time and effort you put into a bit of prep work is directly related to how important that thing is to the story. So my two main characters are my two main characters. They're the most important people, and they are in every single scene, at least one of them. And so that means that their design and their color palette and everything about them is really important, and I want to make sure that I am happy with it and that it all looks nice. But when I design a one-off character that is only in a single chapter or a single scene, or maybe a secondary character that shows up every now and then, I think I have a character who you only see in the beginning and then like at the end, and then I have another character that's probably only seen like 3 times, and it's those characters I don't need to put as much thought into their designs because they're not important. You don't see them for very long, and you don't see them very often. And then in the middle of the story, I know that they meet characters who are important later on. And I consider them not main characters, but they will be very important characters. Like, they're part of the main cast. And so even though they are on the level of Tori and Thea, they don't show up until the middle of Act 2, maybe a little bit later. And so I'm not thinking about them at this second, because I am still in Act 1. And when I get to Act 2, there will be much less prep work I have to do, and so I can devote the time necessary to their character designs. But not right now, because I want to get this started. And I'm going to take as many shortcuts as I can, and those shortcuts include not doing prep work that isn't immediately crucial. So, yeah, that's all I have written down. I thought that this would take longer, but I guess not. I'm usually quite a rambler, but So I hope this helped you in your comic making adventures, or if you're not making a comic, then I hope it's just interesting. I hope at least the drawing was fun to watch. Yeah, I will see you tomorrow. Have a nice day, and thank you for watching.